Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're really getting into something fascinating. How Formula One, which, let's be honest, felt pretty niche for a long time,
That's right.
how it managed to orchestrate this huge global surge. We're looking at the entertainment side, how they grabbed control of their own story and just created this incredible buzz, this desirability.
That's the core of it, isn't it? It stopped being just about the race on Sunday.
Yeah.
We've got sources here, articles, analysis that really map out the strategy, how F1 became this entertainment powerhouse.
Right. So our mission today is to trace that path. Look at the key decisions, the big moments, the partnerships that transformed F1 from, a pure motorsport into this global entertainment beast.
Okay, so where do we start? The sources are pretty clear. The big bang seems to be 2016, Liberty Media's acquisition.
Ah, yes, the $4 4BN gamble, as one source puts it.
A gamble, yeah. But it came with a whole new way of thinking. The previous leadership was very much focused on the track, maybe?
I felt that way, more traditional maybe, but the analysis suggests Liberty immediately saw the potential, well, off track.
Exactly. They saw it wasn't just a sport, it was a potential entertainment platform.
hmm
And they had a plan.
The three-step content plan.
Yeah, that's how it's framed. And the platforms mentioned really tell the story. Instagram, YouTube.
And Netflix. You can see the direction straight away. Go digital, tell your own story, find the audience where they already are.
And you saw the results pretty quickly, didn't you? Especially on YouTube. Around 2018, things started changing.
The YouTube effect, what did that actually look like?
Well, it was mostly about access, I think. F1 used to feel quite closed off, kind of distant.
Very much so.
But suddenly the official channels were just pumping out content. You had driver interviews, behind-the-scenes stuff, compilations, new angles on highlights. It felt like they peeled back the curtain a bit.
Yeah, it wasn't just race reports. It was humanizing. You got to know the people involved.
And the result was, well, pretty straightforward according to the material. More videos, more views, more fans. Simple formula, but clearly a deliberate choice.
Okay, so that's building the base, more accessible content. What came next?
Well, building on that, around 2019, this idea really took hold that every story matters, applying that narrative focus directly to the racing itself.
Right, this is where the storytelling gets really interesting because, okay, the fight for the lead is always exciting, but what about
The rest of the bid. Exactly.
how do you make that compelling for someone who isn't a hardcore fan? The sources mention making the battle for P15 into watchable TV.
Yeah, making P15 exciting. They started weaving in narratives all through the field. Team radio snippets, those little rivalries, the struggle for just one position, even way back.
Adding the human drama, the stakes, even if it wasn't for the win.
Precisely. So every race now had a story behind it, not just the podium fight. It was a conscious push to get you emotionally invested in, well, everyone.
And the sources call this the start of a new era of content. But I think we both know the single biggest accelerator, especially for breaking into new markets.
Oh, no question. Drive to Survive on Netflix.
Yeah, the impact was just
Yeah.
huge.
The sources really hammer this home. The timing was kind of perfect, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Launched in 2019, but then the pandemic hit.
Right. Everyone's stuck at home, desperate for something to watch.
And loads of people, as the material says, just came across Drive to Survive, and it was perfectly pitched for newcomers.
Definitely. It wasn't about the technical bits. It was all drama, personalities, the clashes behind the scenes. It gave you an emotional way in.
And the effect, especially in the U.S., was just staggering. You had clips going viral like Gunther Steiner from Haas.
Oh, yeah. His rants became memes, reaching people who'd never watched F1.
Absolutely. And that translated. Races started showing up on U.S. network ABC more regularly. Big difference from being stuck on niche sports channels.
You had drivers on Ellen.
Celebs talking about it because they'd binged the show.
Even race results popping up in the Washington Post, driver interviews in Vanity Fair. It wasn't just sports news anymore.
No, it crossed over. F1 became part of the cultural conversation in a way it just hadn't been before, particularly stateside.
And the sources are explicit. DTS plus the pandemic timing. That was key to finally cracking America.
It provided that hook, the ongoing narrative.
So building on all that, the digital push, the storytelling, the Netflix effect, the sources talk about F1 now having this unfair advantage by 2025.
Yeah, it's a strong phrase, unfair advantage.
What's the thinking there? How is it unfair?
It comes down to its size, actually. Compared to other huge global sports leagues, the analysis points out F1 is just smaller.
How so?
Look at the numbers they give. Just 10 teams, 20 drivers, 24 races. Now compare that to the NBA, maybe 560 players, over 1,200 games. Or the Premier League's similar player numbers, 380 games.
Okay, yeah, massive difference in scale, but how is smaller an advantage?
Because in today's world, that smaller scale is perfect for bite-sized consumption. You can actually follow it all.
Ah, I see. You can keep track of the main characters, the key plot lines.
Exactly. You're not overwhelmed. You can genuinely get invested in all 20 drivers, follow their stories, the team dynamics. It encourages deep engagement.
So it creates these super engaged fans who consume every piece of content, as the source says. You can follow the title fight, sure, but also the midfield scraps, the rookies.
The veterans, the team trying to move up the grid, there are only so many key players to track. It makes developing that deep connection, that fandom, much more efficient, maybe.
That makes sense. And the material also touches briefly on some of the financial and rule changes during COVID.
Right, the budget cap, fairer money distribution with the new Concord Agreement, getting rid of the big team's voting power.
Which aren't directly entertainment, but they feed into it, don't they?
Absolutely. A budget cap, ideally, leads to closer racing over time, more unpredictability, better stories. Fairer money helps keep the smaller teams. The sources mention Alfa Romeo, for instance, on the grid, so you maintain that cast of characters. It all supports the potential for drama.
Okay, so the strategy is clearly working. But it hasn't stopped there. They've moved into elevating the brand itself through some massive partnerships, like the LVMH one announced late last year.
Oh yeah, that's a huge signal. A historic 10-year global partnership starting in 2025 with LVMH, Moet Hennessy, Louis Vuitton, the absolute peak of luxury.
And specific brands involved, too. Louis Vuitton, Moet Hennessy, Tag Heuer.
Each bringing something different. Heritage, celebration, precision, motorsport history, with Tag Heuer.
The sources call it unprecedented. And the language used is interesting, positioning F1 as a bridge between global sport and entertainment.
Combining thrilling sport and elegant art de vivre. It's a statement, isn't it? It says F1 belongs alongside global luxury, high fashion, that kind of world.
And reinforces that point about F1 becoming one of the most desirable sports in the world. The LVMH deal basically stamps that approval on it. It elevates the whole perception.
Definitely. But what's really fascinating is what came next. Because almost straight after that ultra-luxury play,
they announced something completely different. Disney.
Exactly. A collaboration with Disney featuring Mickey and Friends starting in 2026. Talk about covering the spectrum.
Two powerhouse entertainment properties, as they say, but aimed at a totally different audience.
Totally. This is about families, kids, stepping outside the world of sport into a broader consumer market. Experiences, content, merchandise.
It's about cross-pollination, right? Introduce Disney fans to F1, introduce F1 fans, maybe younger ones, to these classic characters in a new context.
And the sources mention shared values, creativity, entertainment, innovation. But it also lines up perfectly with the data we saw on younger fan growth.
Yeah, the number's 4 million kids aged 8-12 following F1 in Europe, US. Huge numbers of under 25s on TikTok and Instagram.
So the Disney deal looks like a very direct play for that next generation. Using these globally beloved characters to bring them into the F1 world early, it's bold, unexpected even.
It really shows they're thinking broadly about entertainment, not just the traditional sports fan.
And there's another layer to this expansion into entertainment, the F1 movie.
Right, the Apple original film. Brad Pitt, Joseph Kosinski directing, Lewis Hamilton producing.
Like young names. Jerry Bruckheimer, too. They're positioning it as a massive summer movie event. Apparently, demand for early fan screenings was huge.
And the really cool part, connecting back to the sport itself, is how they made it. They filmed during actual Grand Prix weekends.
Yeah, they integrated a whole fictional 11th team, APXGP, into the paddock, the pit lane, during real race events, blurring that line between the real sport and the Hollywood story.
It's fascinating. The plot sounds pretty classic. Veteran racer returns, mentors a rookie, saves a team.
Relatable stuff. But putting that drama on screen with those production values distributed globally by Apple, it's another huge pillar solidifying F1 as mainstream entertainment.
Okay, so let's try and pull all these threads together. What's the big picture here?
I think the key takeaway is just how deliberate all this has been. F1's recent boom isn't some happy accident. It's the result of a clear strategy driven by Liberty Media since 2016.
They saw the untapped potential for entertainment and storytelling?
Right. They took control of the narrative, used digital platforms like YouTube, then got that massive boost from Netflix's Drive to Survive to make it accessible and highlight the human drama.
Made every part of the race potentially compelling.
Exactly. And then they layered on top these huge strategic partnerships, LVMH for luxury and desirability.
And Disney for broad family appeal and future fans, plus the Hollywood movie.
It's just been this really smart, multifaceted approach to transform the sport's cultural position entirely, from niche motorsport to global entertainment property. It's quite the case study,
It really is a masterclass in strategic narrative control and brand building.
for sure. And, thinking about that Disney deal specifically, Mickey Mouse meets Formula One in 2026.
Yeah, it still sounds kind of wild when you say it like that.
It does. But it makes you wonder, doesn't it? This deliberate blending of high-octane, high-stakes sport with universally known character-based entertainment. What does that partnership really signal about where F1 sees its identity heading? And maybe what lessons are there for other sports looking to capture a broader imagination?
Definitely something to chew on. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into F1's engineered entertainment revolution.